My name is Hala. As a professional life coach, I help women identify and put into action their values, passions, and talents so they can live the purpose-filled life God's already designed for them. Are you ready to live a purpose-filled life? Let's do this. Hello, my name is Hala Salmon, and I am a life coach and educator at HRS Life Coaching. I am extremely passionate about helping women to identify and live out their purpose. Purpose, as I define it, is being exactly who God has designed you specifically to be. Who I am, my purpose, is going to be very different than who you are, your purpose. And it's so beautiful to be able to help women to figure out who they are and in turn live a purpose-filled life. On my podcast, each week, I share various tips or tricks or coaching advice for you to be able to figure out what your purpose is. And today we're going to be talking about what could be viewed as a stumbling block. And that is identifying what drives your life. Or another way of looking at that is, what is the motive behind the choices that you make, the jobs that you accept, the relationships that you enter into, what you post on social media, how you present yourself. What drives your life? What are the motives behind the way that you live? A lot of what I'm going to be sharing about today is taken from the book, The Purpose-Driven Life by Rick Warren. If you're trying to figure out who you are, who you're created to be, the book, The Purpose-Driven Life, is a wonderful resource for you. So today, we're really digging into that question. What drives your life? What are your motives for living? So write that down. I want you to just have that in the back of your mind as I'm explaining some motives that others might have and motives to strive for that will help you to identify your purpose. So the first driving force, or the first motive that we're going to talk about today, is guilt or shame. Many people allow guilt to dictate how they live. If they are ashamed for something that's happened in the past, if they did something that they feel extremely guilty for, maybe someone else has blamed them for something and they've held on to that for many, many years, they are going to constantly feel restless, constantly feel lonely, constantly feel unfulfilled, constantly feel unworthy, because of the guilt and the shame that they allow to control their choices and their decisions. So I want you to pause and just take a moment to think about that concept. In what areas of my life am I allowing guilt or shame to dictate what I do? Where did that guilt or shame come from? How am I allowing the past to imprison me? What are things that I am feeling guilty for now that I allow to control how I'm living? Pause and reflect on that. Try to pinpoint where that guilt is coming from, where that shame is coming from. And recognize that Jesus died so that he could forgive you from those things and take away your guilt. Okay, take away your shame. And that's your opportunity to live in freedom. So that first way that many of us are living, the first motive, the first driving force is guilt and shame. Another driving force or motive that many people have in their life is anger or a lack of forgiveness for other people. That lack of forgiveness builds and builds and builds and builds and becomes resentment and anger, frustration, and allowing that anger to just control everything you do, holding on to it and allowing it into relationships that you have, allowing it to enter into how you treat others, strangers, allowing it into the work that you do, the thoughts that you have. If anger is your driving force, your whole body is going to be, you're going to be ready to blow at any moment. And I actually have experience with this one. I was in an argument with one of my sisters a few years ago, and she said, like, Hala, you keep bringing things up from the past. Can't you just forgive me for that? Like, that was years ago. Can't you just forgive me? And I was kind of like, whoa. And I had to, in the moment, I wasn't able to do this, but I had to step back and really consider, wow, in what ways is lack of forgiveness really preventing me from being able to see people as they are today? And even preventing me from being able to see myself as I am today. Maybe you're angry for some things that you did. That might play into that guilt and shame from our first example. But in what ways is anger or resentment driving the choices that you make, driving your actions, driving the way that you treat other people, driving the way that you live in general? It can be a very dangerous thing to hold on to that. And what's important to recognize is that lack of forgiveness does nothing for the other person that you are refusing to forgive. Consciously or subconsciously refusing to forgive does nothing for them. It only hurts you. So being able to come to a place where you can forgive will only open up those doors for you for being able to live a more full life. That freedom, as I mentioned with the guilt and shame, being forgiven from the guilt and shame brings freedom. Forgiving others for what they've done and getting rid of your anger will bring a lot of freedom as well. So another question for you is, in what ways am I holding on to something that I need to forgive? Whether it might be from a relationship with someone else, maybe it's from a past job that you had, someone treated you unfairly. Maybe it is something that you did that you can't forgive yourself for. What is an area where forgiveness needs to be welcomed in so that you can be rid of the anger and the resentment that's holding you back and driving your choices? No one wants to live a life where anger is driving their choices. The next common driver is fear that often manifests itself in anxiety, feeling anxious about something, not knowing what might happen and being fearful because of that. When we allow fear to be our driving force, or the motive behind what we do or don't do, we get stuck. Fear is one that often prevents us from taking a step forward. Anger, guilt, and shame, we might make choices that steer us in a different direction. Fear stunts us. When fear is a driving force behind the choices that we make, we don't move forward. We stay in this cycle. I see this so often with clients where they want to make changes. They think they're probably capable of making changes, but the fear of the unknown and the fear of actually making those changes or confronting things in their life is crippling, and they can't overcome that fear. So that fear keeps them in this cycle, going round and round and round, making the same choices over and over and over again, and not getting to where they want to be in their life. Being able to feel that fulfillment, being able to feel that purpose. They are stunted by the fear. So what do you do with that? The first thing is to recognize, am I driven by fear? Am I being stopped from having the freedom that we also desperately crave and the joy that we also desperately crave? Am I being stunted because of fear? One of my favorite quotes is, feel the fear and do it anyway. Feel it, be terrified. That's normal. That's okay to be afraid, but do that scary thing anyway. You will be amazed at what happens when you embrace that. Feel the fear and do it anyway. Think about what areas of your life you're afraid and what it would look like to feel that fear, but do that thing that you're craving, regardless of the fear that you have. How might your life look different if you embraced the fear? You felt it, but you did those things that are scary anyway. What might your life look like? Materialism can also be a driving force in our lives, or the motives behind why we do something. We just want more and more and more. We want to have all the things. We want finances. We want the nice car. We want a beautiful home. We want to decorate like Joanna Gaines. We want to travel. We want to have the glitz and the glam. And I will say there's nothing wrong with wanting to have nice things. Okay, God wants to bless us abundantly. God wants us to have things that bring us joy. But when those materialistic things are the driving force in our life, there is no way we are going to find the freedom, the joy, the fulfillment that we desire. When we are living for money or we are living for things, we'll never have enough. Because those things don't change, right? Money stays the same. You might increase in the money that you have. But when you buy things, they stay as they are. And you're not going to be able to do anything about that. You're just going to want to keep buying, keep buying, keep buying. You'll never feel fulfilled. You'll just keep needing these things. You'll never be at peace. So living for materialism or allowing materialism to be the driving force in your life will only bring you frustration and stress. Again, you will never have peace. You will never have true joy, true fulfillment, because you're going to be left wanting. The last really big category for what might drive your life is approval. Whether that be approval from family members, approval from friends, comparison comes in with approval, saying that this person has more than me and so I'm not good enough, so I must have their approval. Or I must have the approval of people on social media. I must get those affirmations, those likes, those comments, those followers. When we live for approval, it's very similar to materialism. We're never going to have enough, or we're going to be so broken when we don't get that approval. We don't get that satisfaction from the person that we're craving it from. The other thing that's really tough about having approval or what other people think of you being the driving force is that you will make choices or do things that are not authentic to who you are. You're going to be making choices that please other people, but you're going to have this void or this emptiness in you because it's not fulfilling the things that are uniquely given to you. You might not be using your gifts. You might not be standing firm in your values. You might not be using your passions. You might be pushing those things down in order to receive the approval of others. And this is something that happens at every single phase of life. It's not just those high school girls that are trying to fit in or blend in. It happens to people of all ages. Whether you're in high school, college, just out of college, entering a new job, leaving a job, becoming a parent, becoming a mom, entering a new relationship. You might be doing things to receive the approval of the person that you have a crush on or the person that you're in a new relationship with. You might be doing things to get approval from your children. You might be doing things to get approval from your coworkers. You might be doing things to get approval from your pastor and just trying to blend in and make it seem like you're doing all the right things, but you're not being authentic to who you were created to be. So you're going to have this emptiness. You're going to have this void in your life because you're not living out your purpose. You're trying to fit into others' purposes and finding your joy in what might make them happy versus finding your joy in what God is trying to communicate to you will make you happy. So as you're reflecting on this question, what drives my life? What are the motives behind the choices that I make, the ways that I live, the things I say yes to, what I post on social media and why? When you're considering that question, you might come up with something that I haven't given an example of, and that is okay. It's just important to figure out what is the driving force. So I've listed some more common motives that a lot of people have, but you might find something else. The challenge is to just identify what is driving my life right now. And I want to continue with that challenge. Okay, what's driving my life? And instead of having that driving force, what do I want to have be the driving force? And I would encourage you, and what I work with my clients on, is to figure out their purpose. Let your purpose be the motive for your life. Knowing your purpose helps you to have meaning and definition for what you do. Once you know what your purpose is, you're able to find that fulfillment because it gives your life meaning. When you're able to fully live as who you are, who God has created you to be, living a life that honors Him, you'll find that joy and that fulfillment in that purpose. You'll find meaning. It makes your life a little bit easier because you can give a gauge when you're making choices. Well, is this in line with my purpose? Does this resonate with who I am? Is this in line with my values? Does this line up with what I'm passionate about? Does this line up with what I'm good at? Does this line up with what I've figured out is my purpose? Allowing your purpose to drive your life also gives you motivation. It makes you want to do more. It makes you want to feel the fear and do it anyway, because you're able to identify, well, this is what I'm supposed to do with my life. This is who I am, and this is how I want to live. So I'm going to do that. It gives you motivation for doing the hard things, for facing the challenges, for having the courage to say no, having the courage to say yes in different situations. And what most people want out of life is joy. They want to feel peace. They want to feel like themselves. And the hardest thing is to be able to identify, but what does that even mean? What does feeling like myself really mean? And I would encourage you to lean into that question. What does it feel like to be myself? To shift from the drivers that you currently have, that are your motives for your life, the reasons that you're doing the things that you do, the choices that you make, the people you befriend. In order to shift to living more in line with your purpose and allowing your purpose to be your driving force, you have to figure out what your purpose is. And I work with my clients on my core team, and we craft a life purpose statement. A lot of that life purpose statement has to do with thinking back to moments in your life when you felt you were living on purpose. You were in the zone. You were in the flow. You were feeling like your best self. So spend some time identifying what those moments are for you. When do you feel your best? What are things that give you that joy? What are things that give you that peace? How can you incorporate more of that into your life? And how can you allow those things to be the driving force in the choices that you make, in the way that you live? When we allow our purpose to be the driving force, and our purpose, essentially, again, the way I define it, is being exactly who God has designed you specifically to be. When we're living in line with that, we find that joy, we find that peace, we find that fulfillment. So identify what's your driving force right now. What is the motive you have for making the choices that you make and living the life that you're living? Are you stuck in a cycle of fear? Are you ruled by guilt and shame? Are people's approval more important to you than God's approval or your approval? Think about what's the driving force currently in your life and how you can make the shift to allow your purpose, or who you were created to be your driving force. If you need some assistance with this is what I work on with all of my clients. We come up with our life purpose statement, and we tweak that over and over again until it feels right, until it's something we can rely on, until it's something that is in line with what we're hearing God speaking to us. And it is one of my greatest joys and treasures to be able to help women to do that. And so if, as you're listening to this episode, you're thinking, oh man, like I would love to figure out what my life purpose statement would be, you might be a good fit for my core team. And I would love to tell you more about that. You can email me at halasalmon@hrslifecoaching.com. You can check out my website, www.hrslifecoaching.com, and I'd be happy to tell you more about my programming. Thank you so much for tuning in. Let me know what you thought of the episode, what you learned, and even what your driving force is. If there's something that I missed, I would love to hear it. What is driving your life right now? Let me know in the comments, and let me know how you're working towards fulfilling your purpose so that you can have a purpose-filled life. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'd love to hear what you learned from this episode, so feel free to shoot me a message or leave me a comment. And don't forget to subscribe for more tools to live a purpose-filled life.